Other questions?
So I guess this is related to Jim and Dan's questions. I'm just wondering if you think maybe that Socrates might have thought that this sort of moral mission was at the very least continuous with the political mission, insofar as, in a way that's consistent with being sort of skeptical of majority rule, insofar as you might think that being democratic is not, democracy doesn't just mean majority rule, because there's plenty of instances of majority rule that are non-democratic, but that democracy is in some important sense a matter of self-government, and teaching people to be virtuous is teaching them to govern themselves. Right, and you can't govern yourself. You can't govern yourself if you can't govern yourself, right? So this is so there's something important and political in whether it be Alcibiades or whether it be anybody on the street, in that teaching people to govern themselves and govern themselves well is both a moral and a political project, especially in the context of Athenian democracy, right? Which is not representative democracy. It's about taking part as an active citizen in the ruling of Athens. I just wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, if the Socratic enterprise really could help people achieve this expertise in moral virtue, then I think there would be an attractive political fallout, which is that then you have people who have the requisite expertise to rule. But it's sort of a symptom relationship. So it's not his primary mission, it's merely a desirable consequence that that's something you would get out of it.
I have one more question toward the back.
One element of one of the tenets of the Socratic philosophy that you laid out was the notion that no one does wrong in a sort of morally culpable way. It's sort of out of ignorance rather than malice. And I was a bit surprised.
I wouldn't put it that way, I'm sorry. It's not that no one is morally culpable, because people are morally culpable for being ignorant, according to Socrates. It's just that no one does wrong willingly or knowingly. Sorry.
Oh, all right. Well, I would have some question about whether that distinction is a defensible one, but granting that, I'm a bit surprised that didn't play a more prominent role in your discussion of the trial itself, because Socrates seems to rely on that kind of reasoning in defending himself against the charge of corrupting the youth, sort of saying that he wouldn't have knowingly done something so heinous, because he would have, if he had known he was doing something wrong, he would have known that there would be all sorts of punishment or bad results for himself. And it seems like that's very relevant to charges or concerns about Socrates as a potential threat to Athenian democracy, because it seems like that sort of reasoning could be used to exculpate a great many other crimes as well, beyond just the one Socrates is facing.
Yeah, unfortunately Stone draws that conclusion too, but it doesn't follow at all for Socrates, because we are totally responsible for being ignorant. So, it's like if a cop stops you on the side of the highway and you say, "But officer, I didn't know that the speed limit was 65. That's not going to get you out of the speeding ticket, right? And similarly for Socrates. So you are responsible for becoming an expert with respect to moral virtue. It doesn't, but if you have the expertise, then you cannot help but act in accordance with it. So if we do in fact act wrongly, it's not that our actions are excused, because we are responsible for being ignorant.
I suppose one thing, wouldn't that then undermine Socrates' use of it as a self-defense in the trial? Is he sort of defending himself against the accusation that he was a corrupter of the youth? But if he would, let's say hypothetically he were a corrupter of the youth, he would still be culpable for the ignorance involved in that. So I don't see how it would then serve the function that Socrates in Plato's Apology seems to put it forth as, if it were not a bit more broader than just, I guess there seems to be a certain ambiguity in that the way he uses it in the trial seems to allow for a very broad notion about ignorance, sort of maybe keeping people from being culpable for particular actions. So I'm just wondering if do you think that Socrates, as Plato presents him, is that an argument that holds up with other principles he has regarding knowledge and culpability?
Well, I wouldn't bring culpability in the way you are, so I think that's where we go in different directions. If he did in fact harm anyone, he would say that he didn't willingly or knowingly do this, so he did it out of ignorance, but he wouldn't use that as an excuse. He would use that as a reason to then subject himself to the Socratic method even harder to try to cure himself from this psychic disease. But I also think that he didn't take himself to have corrupted the youth. So the Athenians may have thought that he did, but I don't think he took himself to have corrupted the youth. If there were, this came up previously, if there were people in the circle who then went on to behave badly, that was not because he persuaded them that they needed to act in this way. That was because they went off on their own and did this, because they had the wrong priorities, things like pleasure and power and so forth.
All right, it's time to bring our discussion to a close. You're all invited to take a bit of time and enjoy the reception outside. And now let's thank our speaker.